Okay, so hello everyone. This is Antonio Barona, CEO from Sustainable Innovations. And we're back again to a new episode of our Quarantine Chronicles. Today is quite special. We don't have one, but two really amazing guests. They're coming from Intel Corporation, a giant technological company. And we have the pleasure to have them with us and for them to tell us a little bit about the industry, the impact on COVID 19 and most especially their sustainability impacts nowadays. So, Daniel, Taimur, how are you? How is Arizona and San Diego today?
It's
Fantastic.
beautiful and nice and warm, only a balmy 106 today.
Oh,
And I'm in San Diego, so it's a balmy I don't know, 75 and not a cloud in the sky. It's beautiful.
wow. So, great. Now, as usual, we're going to try to keep the same format as previous episodes. But to sum up, we have three main objectives. Number one, the idea is to know our guest, the background, the work experience, the role, and pretty much to understand how is it that you guys got there. Second objective will be to know a little bit more about the industry and the impacts that the current events are having on the organization. And at the end, just try to leave a message for our audience. So I think now we can start. In the screen we have somehow the templates that we have prepared just as a reference of the conversation. But now I would like to start with Daniel. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, your background, how do you get there, and especially what does it mean to be a director of new experiences in emerging technologies at Intel?
Yeah, thanks, Antonio, and it's so good to talk to you again. I can tell you the first thing is that photo that you have online is a few years old. That's before I had a lot of gray hair. But
I don't
hey,
think that changed much.
no, it's yeah. So thanks for having me on it on this call here. Yeah, so I'm the director of new experiences and emerging technologies here at Intel in our Internet of Things group, right? So it's a group within Intel that it's about a $4+ billion a year group of Intel out of 70-71 billion-dollar a year company. And I run emerging technologies from the business side. So looking at technologies that are going to impact the Internet of Things from primarily business side. And I like to describe it a lot of, it's almost like running a startup. Typical to a startup, a lot of our technologies aren't going to come to market that we're working with. A handful do, and then a few, will hit it big and become a new product line for us as we look for solutions in the Internet of Things space. And I think the coolest part of the job is you get to kind of almost play like the startup kind of role, but without having a tin cup through VCs all the time. I say it's kind of like developing something, but you've got really rich parents. Although remember sometimes your parents can be harder on you than your friends as well. So it's an interesting role. We work a lot with computer vision, a lot with AI, and then a lot with there's a lot of new things hitting the market around robotics and automation that my teams are involved with. And then the second question was, how did I get here? It's an interesting path. I mean, I don't know if I've arrived per se, but when I got out of school, it was early '90s. I'll date myself a little bit, and it was in a place where the world was in a not so unlike it is today. A lot of uncertainty. There were a lot of so when the Gulf War was happening. If you all go back into history and research that, and companies weren't hiring, and so I went off and worked at an internship. Did a job in the advertising space. I realized pretty quickly there's not a lot of money in the advertising space unless you own the agency, and I wasn't in a position to do that. So I joined a company called AT&T and got on their management track, worked my way up through AT&T for about 8 years, ran about a $250 million business there, got out of AT&T, did a couple of startups, sold one, and swore I'd never work for another big company again. And here I am at Intel 16 years later. So that's the quick story. And I've done a variety of roles at Intel. And but this is probably the most exciting. and partly because we have the opportunity. I mean, if you look at our purpose, right, it's to build technologies that enrich the lives of every person on the planet. And we kind of get to start that, right? So, I mean, everything we look at how does this, and, enrich the lives of every individual on the globe. And so we have initiatives around, making sure people are connected, that they're participating in the digital world, and they can take advantage of the new things that hit them. So that's my quick summary, Antonio.
Okay, wow, really interesting. Thanks for sharing, Daniel. So now let's, Taimur. For me personally, I think it's a great pleasure to meet you. And once again, thank you to have you have accepted this invitation. Now, same as Daniel, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background? How do you get there? And what does it mean to be a global green building and global solid waste program manager at Intel?
Yeah. First, I can say
Long,
I'm a little
long
younger than
title.
Daniel, so that's good. Um, so let's see. I've been at Intel, I guess I'm going on 23 years now. So I started off in the environmental world. I have a bachelor's and master's in environmental. And one of the first things they said when I joined, I was at a factory site, which I've been at forever now, was we need you to go fix solid waste. We were at 44% for recycling, and they wanted us to get us above 50%, which now everyone laughs at. Really? That was hard? I'm like, well, back then it was. Right. And I started off diving in dumpsters and figuring things out. And then I owned wastewater compliance, chemical waste management and compliance, emergency response, air permitting, et cetera, over the 15 years or so at that site as one of their senior environmental engineers, or maybe it was 18 years. And then eventually I moved from there to be the corporate hazardous waste program owner and green building program owner, and then eventually hopped over to the world of sustainability to do what I was already doing, which was managing waste and looking at how we design and build buildings, factories, data centers, you name it. Anything new building we're building, I will be involved in to go and ask simple questions like, how do we get better? What else can we do? What's a better idea? This is what we've done before. Was it the best idea? Is there something else we can do? So that's how I got into the field. And what do I do now is I work on early programming and design, and then throughout the design and even the operations of our factories and data centers and buildings, and just looking at how we do things, what we can do better. And on the waste side, I work on creating our new goals. I believe our CSR report is either just come out or is about to come out, and we'll have new waste goals there. So I'm the one who came up with those. So I'll be managing those and looking at what else can we do. One of the first things I always run into is it's a waste. I'm like, is it really a waste? It's just something you don't want, but maybe somebody else wants. Maybe we could do something cool with it. And actually, in times like this, is where you have those breakthroughs, because people are trying to do things differently. What the old paradigms are breaking, the old models are no longer working. So what else can be done? And that's where I come in.
Okay, I think I'm gonna need to keep talking with you for longer. I don't think 20 minutes are going to be enough, but that's a really nice introduction from your side. Um, Now, like I said, I mean, we have some slides talking about the main focus areas of Intel and some activities. But I would like to jump into the conversation already with Daniel, and I would like to ask you, how is the current global crisis impacting your organization? How such great and big organization is managing these times?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not unlike, probably what everyone else is experiencing as well, right? We moved from, I think one of the reports I read is we moved 110,000 people remotely in a matter of hours, right? And believe it or not, and knock on wood a little bit, our VPN has sustained up to this point. And I'll tell you, there's a saying out there that bad companies are going to fold in time of crisis. Great companies are gonna come out of it even healthier. And I'll tell you, it tells a lot about a company when you go through crises, right? And do you just look internally, or do you look at, how is this impacting your customers? How is it impacting your supply chain? And how do you learn from it? And I'll tell you, I've been just incredibly impressed and proud of Intel through this. I mean, we announced a $50 million donation fund to help with COVID, particularly around two initiatives. One is the healthcare community and how we can actually enable technologies faster, right, to actually go help this pandemic as well as future ones. And then announce an initiative to actually help children around the world who have been forced out of school but don't have maybe the equipment that they need to actually, continue their education at home. Our foundation has stepped up with, employee matching dollars and so on, and it's just been just a really interesting time with this, as well as we donated 1 million units of PPE, right, to healthcare workers as well. And so the company's done quite a bit. But where I think like it's interesting is, how do you emerge from this even better, right? And so, we partnered with some things that folks don't hear a lot about, but actually on my team we partner with a group called the X Prize Foundation out of LA, and they launched an initiative with it's called the X Prize Pandemic Alliance, of which Intel actually helped build the architecture that resides on, the data architecture that resides on. And Anthem Healthcare dumped in 45 million viral transmission data records, right? And over the past 12 years. And so you've got the first SARS kind of virus included in that as well. And so all the tools are there for the world's leading data scientists to actually start taking those, that data and actually start looking at, are there ways to actually help solve COVID-19, as well as how do you prevent future pandemics? And I think like as you come out of this, you've got to come out of this, healthier, right? And focus on things around the world. And so on my team, like I said, we could have shelved several of the future, innovation initiatives, right? We work on future technologies, but instead, we're looking at how do we accelerate those, and how do we make sure that they drive to our core purpose as a company to enrich the lives of every person on the planet. And as a result of that, I think if you're aligned to your core purpose, you have a purpose for being. And I think Taimur will explain quite a bit of that too when it comes to sustainability and the environment. You come out of crisis, healthier, right? Because you actually have things that the world needs. And if you have things that the world needs, you're going to be okay as a corporation. So that's my quick kind of answer to your question. There's a lot we could talk about, but that's a high level.
Okay. And I mean, we've been talking about normally these crises, they have, of course, challenges in different industries and opportunities in different industries. What have been the most challenging part, for example, in your unit?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of challenges. Certainly, I don't want to focus on what seems to be publicized so much. There's remote worker environment. I mean, in my unit, it's really gone smoothly, right? I think there's challenges as far as I guess specifically, some of the challenges that we're facing is the accessibility to the labs, right? And to working on hands-on technology. When you're working on a compute system and board and delivering that to a customer, it's a lot easier when you're sitting there with all of your engineers in the same room together, kind of working things out. But even because of that, we've been able to actually use new tools and a lot of video conferencing to actually solve a lot of problems. So I don't know so much that we've really taken that much of a step back, right? I mean, Intel announced their first quarter results, whatever it was, a week or so ago, and it was a good quarter for our company. It's not to say that we're not going to have some challenges, as we continue to progress through this crisis. But I think on the team we've done well, and first and foremost, it's the safety of our people and the health of our employees and our customers, and we've taken the measures to make sure that that's in place.
Okay, no, sounds really interesting. And Taimur, from your side, what can you tell us about environmental efforts, maybe before, during, and after the crisis? What's happening?
Um, with those things that we already do and we're planning to do, those actually haven't changed, right? We actually met our 2020 goals and we've created our 2030 goals and we're moving forward. Water conservation, no change there. Energy conservation, how I manage waste and figure out how to upcycle. None of those have changed. Actually, it sort of gives me an opportunity to think a little differently now about what things I should split out more and look at what I could do from a segregation at tool level chemistry, right? What things are potentially useful to the community if I was able to segregate and reuse. But um, with these challenges, I mean, from a design standpoint, I can design here versus the office is fine. I can still pull the data. We have amazing suppliers and vendors that have worked with us well to make sure we still have full capacity and capabilities to meet all of our environmental expectations and to push forward into our next generation goals.
Okay.
And,
So,
Antonio, it's interesting. I think what you're hearing, from both the Taimur and my side, so you got a little bit of the technical kind of fab side as well as the business side, is, things are actually going quite well in a really, really, really weird environment. And I mean, I can tell you from the business side, we launched an effort where we connect with every one of our major customers every 30 days. But instead of getting on planes and traveling all around the world, which we did all the time, it's calls like this, right, where we're just sitting reaching out to them. And we're not talking about, yeah, sure, we're talking about their business, but a lot of it is, hey, how are you doing? How can we help? What learnings can we share? And I think that's important when you go through a crisis like this, as far as, kind of looking outside of yourself a little bit into that customer supply chain and ecosystem that you service.
yeah, that's really interesting to listen, because you would expect that for such large organization having so many people involved through the whole value chain, from the manufacturing process, materials, office, working development. Um, but I mean, from what you said, everything is under control. I mean, operations are as usual, and this is thanks to also technology and the way that you guys are communicating constantly through all the different channels.
But
Um,
first and foremost, it's the people, right? I actually roll up under environmental health and safety. And our environmental health and safety professionals, whether it's the nurses, the IHs, your toxicologists, et cetera, obviously being environmental, I'll talk about us, right? But they're doing an amazing job. The site operations environmental folk, EHS, are designed the systems to keep us safe, specified this is how the frequency of cleaning everything, and we share that. We talk to our partners, our suppliers, our vendors, you're coming on site, etc. It's all the same. The first question of every single meeting has been, are you safe? Are you okay?
wow, that's great. I mean, it's so nice to have all these nice positive feedback from such a large organization. So now we have, I think we have some questions relating to the current situation that I think is in the, I think it's about in the next slide. This one, yeah. Um, how can the current, I mean, the COVID-19, what's your personal opinion about how could COVID-19 help fight climate change, given all what we have seen so far?
I think it's actually causing people to think differently. Let's take the whole example of you can work from home. You don't need to necessarily get on a plane, right? And people immediately focus on look at the air pollution. Well, also, if you look at the amount of plastics that are probably ending up in watersheds, it's cut down because you don't have as many people driving. So the little rubber from the tire that gets burned off or ripped off as you drive down the roads, that's less. So, the learnings from this of do we really need to be as mobile in the sense of driving everywhere? is interesting. Or let's take, for example, gardening. Gardening has gone up. A lot of people are like, maybe I should grow my own, in my case, chili peppers, right? Um, and you're seeing that sort of urban gardening happening where people are getting once more sort of back to nature a little bit and trying to grow their own food and talking to their neighbors more. So you're seeing, both from an individual level and a community level, a little bit more change, a little bit more neighborhoods.
Yeah, I'll just. By the way, Taimur, this is really his area, and you're spot on, right? I would just say, just from a business perspective, I mean, for so long, right, in the business world, we've had people that were, they may not have been resistant to telecommuting or working from home or working from wherever, but there was this kind of underlined implied kind of mandate that you'd be in the office, right? And remember this, by the way, if leadership is in the office, but you tell people, oh, you can work from wherever you want, people will come to the office. Just a natural reaction, right? But when you look at a company like Intel and you see your CEO working out of his house, doing video calls out of his house, and all of his executive team, and they tell you, do not come to the office, right? Because we are concerned about your safety and your well-being. And then all of a sudden you see the company actually doing okay, right? And surviving and thriving. It does change your perspective on what I would kind of call, and it's an overused term, but the future of work, right? And there's a lot of initiatives around the future of work. Do I see a day where we're always going to all the time commute back to the office, back and forth every single day? No way. I just can't see that happening. So I think what's happened is it's taught us that we can actually sustain and maintain and thrive in business without all of us being, on top of each other all the time, all day long. Yeah, I always like to brag that my car gets 3 weeks to the gallon now, right? I'm not driving it as much. I'm working more. I'll tell you that. I'm working a lot more, and I'm saving almost 2 hours a day in my own, what I call sanity and commute time. So I think you're going to see just a different way of doing work. I don't think anything will ever replace the value of a face-to-face meeting. I'm being honest, right? And doing business face-to-face with somebody and shaking their hand and looking them in the eyes. However, I do believe it will become much more infrequent.
Yeah, that was exactly what our next question was going to be like. Can we maintain this? And it seems like the current situation has taught us, all of us, that it's possible. Like working from home is possible, and different sectors is possible. And what actions do you guys think we should recommend to enduring an environmental health once, let's say, this quarantine that we've been living, at least in France or in Spain, are finished within the next few days? Um, how can we keep this up?
I think, in my opinion, you first have, the individual actions of like, oh, keep up your urban gardening, for example. Grow your own food again. Do you really need to drive around that much? I mean, there's individual actions, but then the whole community, NGOs, and governments sort of getting together to say, what should work be, right? What should, like, and you're saying, what is the new work life? How do we address this, whether it's online schooling, working from home, etc.? I mean, certain things, you're making chips, you're going to be in the fab, right? Certain number of people need to be there fixing tools, etc. But for years, it's actually run from a remote operation center, right? People used to go by and walk through the factory and be like, where is everyone? Oh, it's automated. We're running remote operation center. The question is, can you do things like that from your house, or is there too much time? Does it take too much time for the data to flow? Right, that latency issue is probably one of the things that's going to come up about how do we have more effectively faster communications. But from an environmental footprint standpoint, hopefully this has been an aha of perhaps we can all change and do things a little bit differently. Perhaps suddenly when people can see the mountains from their city or see the beach where before they haven't been able to do that in 40 years, it'll cause people to change their mindset. Because one of the hardest things to do is honestly quantify environmental savings so someone can easily understand it. I actually tend to never talk about carbon because I don't think enough people can visualize it. Like if you were to ask me what a ton of carbon looks like, I'm like, well, are we talking about diamonds or coal? What are we talking about here, right? Um, being my realm, I can always visualize. Oh, I know exactly what a pH of 1 is going to look like. I'm going to picture phosphoric acid, right? Well, water is supposed to be a pH of 7. It's clear, right? But suddenly being able to see things that you couldn't see in the past, that should help a lot. Because now people can visualize what change could be.
Okay. So thank you very much for your kind answers. Now we go back to one final question to both of you. Um, the plan is to leave a final message to our audience, which are mostly young professionals that just graduated or they're just in the first years of the professional life. And wow, boom, all of a sudden they're facing this global crisis with all these effects. What would your message of encouragement would be for them?
Yeah.
This is a good time to learn.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, right. This is a really good time to broaden your knowledge base, right? Things that you don't normally look at, learn something new. If you haven't taken organic chemistry, learn some things. If you haven't studied the Clean Air Act, study it. Broaden your technical base, but to me the most important thing with your career is to broaden your network and your communication skills.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. By the way, Taimur, you're spot on, right? I heard today that you can be a know-it-all or a learn-it-all, right? And I think the latter is probably more helpful in the long term. I think just thinking back through it is that I would say two things. Number one, man, I remember very vividly the days when I first graduated from university, and the world was in a very much a turmoil, and I sent out, this is before email, guys, so I sent out literally hundreds of just like cover letters and resumes and applications to major corporations all around the U.S. I was open to kind of working anywhere, and I got so many rejection letters back. I used to plaster my walls with them in my apartment, and just for this determination that it wasn't going to bring me down. And it did take time, right? And things are going to take time today. But the people who are going to succeed I believe, are going to be a fundamentally different leader than what we have in a lot of organizations today, right? And to do that, you have to change. You have to see things differently. You have to look at things differently. Exactly what Taimur just said, right? If you are not versed around sustainability, right, and kind of like the betterment and the procurement of that particular efforts, which Taimur's an expert in, I think you're gonna have a hard time finding a job today, right? Know the business skills, know the technical skills, but have a sense of purpose, right? As to why we want to hire you versus, quite frankly, the millions of other folks right now that are unemployed. It will take time, but there's absolutely hope on this, right? There's never been a better time, I believe, to learn, something new and think 5 to 10 years down the road, what do you want to see change? And those are the kind of leaders that we need, right? And again, I'll tell you this, I mean, you're called a leader for a reason, because people are following you, right? And there will be some fundamental changes in the way that happens in the future. And a lot of it has to go around what we're talking about today. And those are the folks I believe are going to not only just, not survive, but thrive in the new economy and the new world that we emerge from.
Well, that's about right. Those are great words. Daniel and Taimur, I think we have reached the end of our conversation. I know you both are extremely busy people. We don't want to take more of your time, and just appreciate the fact that you have been able to be here with us. So thank you so much for your time. I think this has been a great episode, nice conversation. Be safe. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Antonio. Thanks,
Thank you.
Taimur. See you guys. Yep.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.